leaked video shows Jimin humiliating Jungkook during a high-stakes US event, but Jungkook's stunning reaction flips the room upside down. The silence was heavy, oppressive as the sharp sound of a coffee cup hitting the conference table echoed like a gunshot. "Are you seriously going to play that card here, Jungkook?" Jimin's voice rang out, cold and clipped, cutting through the tension like a scalpel. Every staff member in the American production team froze mid-breath. Jungkook's knuckles whitened as he clutched the edge of the table. The room wasn't ready for this. Cameras were still on, although they weren't supposed to be rolling. No one expected the script rehearsal to spiral into a storm of personal tension, and no one dared interfere. Outside the expansive glass windows of the LA studio, palm trees swayed innocently in the breeze. Inside, emotional chaos was building like a thundercloud. Jimin had just called Jungkook out publicly, and with calculated sharpness about a creative choice Jungkook had made on stage 2 nights ago. But it wasn't just criticism. It was personal. He questioned Jungkook's judgment, his professionalism, and worst of all, his loyalty to the group. "You acted like a solo artist. That's what you want, right?" Jimin's voice carried venom, laced with unspoken disappointment. Jungkook didn't speak. Not yet. His eyes were dark, not with anger, but with something deeper. He wasn't someone who exploded outwardly. No. He imploded. The staff sat like statues. No one moved. No one even coughed. An assistant director gripped her tablet tightly, her eyes darting between the 2 BTS members as if she were witnessing something sacred or sacrilegious. Jungkook stood up slowly, his jaw clenched, chest visibly rising and falling. The studio lights threw his shadow across the floor like a warrior preparing for battle. He didn't look at Jimin when he finally spoke. "I never asked to be praised. I asked to be understood." The air rippled. One of the American producers leaned closer, clearly trying to grasp the sudden weight of the moment. Jungkook turned toward the team, toward the staff who had flown in from New York, from Seoul, from all corners of the globe to produce this globally broadcasted reunion interview. His voice didn't tremble, but it wasn't loud either. It was intimate, wounded, human. "I poured my soul into that performance not to steal a spotlight, but because it was the only way I could say what I never dared to speak." The crew members exchanged glances. Even Jimin's expression shifted just slightly at the subtle crack in Jungkook's voice. Jungkook stepped forward. "When I stood alone under those lights, I wasn't trying to stand above anyone. I was trying to remember who I was. Without the noise, without the expectations, without someone constantly telling me who I'm allowed to be." He paused. A second, 2. Then, "I did it for my mother. It was the anniversary of her accident that night. She couldn't speak anymore, but music was the only thing that ever reached her." Jimin's lips parted, as if to say something, but nothing came out. The tension that had coiled itself tightly around the room began to loosen, fraying like rope cut from one side. Jungkook faced the cameras, eyes unwavering. "So yes, I went off script, but I did it not to betray the group, but because the pain in my chest was louder than your silence, Hyung." It hit like thunder. Jimin's face paled. Regret? Maybe, or something more complicated. A beat of silence. Then, another. And suddenly, one of the American producers, mid-30s, stoic, stood up and began clapping. Slowly. Then the sound grew. Like rain falling on a roof, the applause echoed across the studio, first hesitant, then rising. The lighting tech, the makeup artist, the translator, and then the rest of the staff. Standing, clapping, for a man who had just stripped himself emotionally in front of a room full of strangers. Jungkook didn't smile. He didn't bow. He just stood there, eyes locked with Jimin's, who looked like he had been slapped with truth rather than insult. Later that day, a clip from a private rehearsal segment mysteriously surfaced online. The video had no watermark, no editor's signature, but it spread like wildfire under the hashtag #RespectJungkook. Netizens dissected every second, every word, every twitch of Jimin's face. But none of them knew the full story. Not yet. Because what happened next, what happened when the applause died down and the cameras were turned off, would change the story forever. And behind closed doors, the real reckoning was just beginning. "You don't get to do that," Jimin snapped, the moment the last staff member exited the room and the heavy studio doors shut with a dull thud. The applause still lingered faintly in the hallway, like echoes of a decision no one fully understood. You don't get to paint yourself as the victim while making me the villain. Not like this, Jungkook. Jungkook didn't move. His arms were crossed now, not in defiance, but as if he was trying to physically hold himself together. His lips were pressed into a line, eyes focused on the floor, as if searching for some version of himself buried beneath the polished concrete. I didn't ask them to clap. No, but you knew what that moment would do, Jimin said, walking toward him. His steps were precise, restrained. Every inch of him was tension bottled in a too-tight frame. You knew bringing up your mother would turn the entire room against me. Jungkook's head slowly lifted. He didn't blink. So now it's my fault I still grieve her? Jimin opened his mouth, but no sound came. There was a flicker guilt? Maybe? Shame? But it vanished too quickly to hold. That's not what I said. You implied it, Jungkook replied, his voice low but unwavering. You stood there and humiliated me in front of people who don't even speak our language. You made me look like some arrogant rookie trying to steal the spotlight. And for what? Because I performed a solo part without checking with you first? You crossed a line, Jimin said, voice rising. And you knew it. We had agreed to keep the performance balanced. I was balanced, Jungkook snapped. But I was also human. I wasn't trying to disrespect you. I was trying to survive that night. The silence that fell next was dense, almost cruel in its weight. Jimin's chest rose and fell with uneven breaths. His fingers curled at his sides. Jungkook, on the other hand, finally uncrossed his arms and stepped forward. You think I wanted to turn that moment into something about me? He asked, quieter now. Do you have any idea how hard it was to even show up that night knowing she wouldn't be there to watch? You think applause fixes that? You think trending hashtags make that grief smaller? Jimin's eyes glistened, but he didn't break. Not yet. Then talk to me, damn it, he hissed, voice barely above a whisper. Why didn't you just tell me? You think I'm made of stone? That I wouldn't have understood if you had come to me like a brother instead of ambushing the group with some cryptic tribute? I tried, Jungkook said. His voice cracked just barely, but enough to slice through the air. Every time I looked at you lately, all I saw was disappointment. You've been shutting me out since we landed in LA. Jimin shook his head, taking a step back. I shut you out? You've been disappearing into your own world for weeks. You go quiet during meetings. You avoid rehearsals. And then you show up and drop some solo performance like you're broadcasting a secret to the world, one even I don't get to hear. Jungkook looked away, toward the dimmed stage behind the glass. Because you stopped listening. The words weren't loud, but they were cruel in their softness. Jimin froze. For the first time, the armor cracked. The heat in his eyes dimmed. He didn't respond, not immediately. And when he finally did, it was a whisper. That's not fair. Jungkook turned back to him. Neither is pretending everything is okay just because the cameras are rolling. Jimin leaned against the wall, arms folded, as if bracing for impact. You think I'm just here to perform a perfect image? You think I wanted any of this to happen? I've been trying to hold us together while watching you unravel in silence. You didn't even tell me about the hospital anniversary. You didn't let me be there for you. Because I didn't think you wanted to be, Jungkook replied. Those words gutted Jimin. And for a moment, neither of them spoke. Time seemed to stretch between them, distorted by the years of brotherhood, performances, unspoken wounds, and the quiet ache of two people who had once moved in perfect sync, now out of rhythm. Then the door burst open. Namjoon stepped in first, followed closely by Taehyung and Hoseok. Their faces said it all. They had seen the clip, and the room changed instantly. Jimin's posture stiffened. Jungkook's gaze dropped. Taehyung started carefully. Can we talk? Jimin didn't look at him. About what? Namjoon stepped forward, calm but firm. You already know, Jimin scoffed, turning his back. Of course. Now I'm the one on trial. No one's putting you on trial, Hoseok said, voice gentler. We saw the clip. It's everywhere already. Great, Jimin muttered. Let the court of public opinion do its job then. Don't do that, Namjoon said, more sharply now. Don't dismiss this. You humiliated him, Jimin, in front of people who don't know our history, people who don't understand context. Jimin turned, furious. And what about the context of him going rogue in front of 50 million viewers? You think that didn't put the group in jeopardy? Taehyung stepped in. But what if he didn't go rogue? What if he just broke? That word broke hung in the air like shattered glass mid-fall. Jungkook hadn't spoken since the others arrived. But now, he looked up. I just needed a way to speak. Hosik nodded solemnly. And you did. Loud and clear. The room fell silent again, the weight of everything unsaid settling like fog. Then Namjoon turned to Jimin. You don't have to apologize for being upset, but you do owe him a conversation that isn't laced with shame and sarcasm. Jimin's jaw clenched. Then, slowly, his shoulders dropped. I'm not good at apologizing when I'm the one who feels abandoned, he admitted. I guess I thought pushing back would make him come closer. Not further. Jungkook stepped forward. I never wanted to leave you behind. I just couldn't carry both your expectations and my grief at the same time. Their eyes met. For the first time in weeks, there was no anger. Only sadness. Mutual. Tangled. Namjoon gave them space. We'll give you the room, he said gently, and ushered the others out, closing the door behind them. The silence that followed was different this time. Quieter. More sacred. Jimin took a breath. I don't hate you, Jungkook smiled faintly. I never thought you did. I was scared, Jimin continued. Scared that if you drifted too far, I wouldn't be able to bring you back. And then I watched you say everything I was too afraid to ask about. I wanted to tell you, Jungkook said, but I didn't want you to see me weak again. I've never seen you stronger than you were today. That broke something in Jungkook. Not in a shattering way, but like a lock that finally opened. He exhaled, eyes glistening. Jimin stepped closer. I'm sorry for my words, for the public jab, for the timing, for making you feel like you were alone. Jungkook nodded slowly. I forgive you. Jimin hesitated. Do you forgive yourself? That question hung between them, and then Jungkook whispered, Not yet, but I'm trying. Jimin held out his hand. Jungkook took it. Outside the studio, the sky had shifted. Rain had begun to fall over L.A., gentle, rare, cleansing. Inside, the boys stood in a quiet reconciliation. No applause this time. No hashtags, no lights. Just the real moment, the one no camera could capture. And somewhere in the back room, a small phone vibrated. A new message. An email. Subject line. Leaked recording part due. Uncut. The reckoning wasn't over, but something else had begun. Not the ending. A rebirth. Let me know when you're ready for episode 3, which will unveil what's inside the uncut leaked recording, an explosive moment from BTS's past that threatens to reignite everything they just began to heal. You need to see this. Taehyung's voice was tight, barely controlled. His hand trembled slightly as he held the phone out in front of him. Screen already unlocked. A paused video waiting at the 10-second mark. The thumbnail was grainy, clearly from a hidden angle, but unmistakably real. In the frame, Jungkook and Jimin. Same outfits from earlier, but the timestamp was wrong. It was from the day before the confrontation in the studio. Jungkook stood at the far end of the corridor, staring blankly ahead, his back pressed against the wall near the green room exit. His fists were clenched, mouth moving, but the words couldn't be heard yet. A second figure entered the frame, Jimin. He didn't see the camera. He didn't know this was being recorded. No one did. Taehyung swallowed hard. You said there were no secrets left. Jungkook didn't respond. His eyes locked on the screen like he was watching a ghost reappear. His breathing slowed. He recognized the moment. I thought this file was deleted, Jungkook muttered under his breath. More to himself than to Taehyung. Taehyung looked up sharply. You knew it existed? Jungkook nodded once. I begged them not to release it. It was a test shoot security footage that was accidentally saved to the internal server. The production company promised it wouldn't go anywhere. But now it's in my inbox. Taehyung's voice was a blade, laced with betrayal. Jungkook's voice dropped. Who sent it? No name. Just a burner email. Subject line said, the truth you were never meant to hear. He stepped back. Play it, or I will. Jungkook hesitated only for a second before taking the phone. His thumb hovered over the play icon. His chest rose and fell in a rhythm far too shallow for the calm he was pretending to wear. The moment the screen came alive, the sound kicked in muted at first, then sharp and brutal. You think just because you cry off stage you're the most real one here? Jimin's voice was scathing. You think that earns you sympathy? Respect? I never asked for sympathy. Jungkook's recorded voice replied, flat and wounded. No, you just bask in it. Every interview, every tweet, every time someone calls you the emotional one, you lap it up like a dog begging for praise. Taehyung looked horrified. What the hell? The footage continued. Jimin's body language was tense, almost aggressive. He stepped closer to Jungkook, poking a finger into his chest. You think you're better than the rest of us because you've suffered more? You're not the only one carrying scars, Jungkook. I know that. Do you? Because you don't act like it. You act like you're the soul of this group. Like you carry the burden of all of us. You don't. We all bleed the same under this spotlight. Then came the worst part. Jimin's final words before the clip ended. If you want a break, do it alone. Stop dragging the rest of us into your wreckage. The screen turned black. The silence that followed was apocalyptic. Taehyung stared at Jungkook like he no longer knew him. You were going to let all of us believe that your meltdown in the studio was spontaneous, genuine. But you already had this fight with him the night before? Jungkook closed his eyes. It wasn't supposed to go that far. We were both angry. It spiraled. You knew he was unraveling, Taehyung whispered. You knew, and still you let the narrative paint you as the victim the next day. Jungkook opened his mouth to defend himself, but there was no defense strong enough to counter that truth. The door opened behind them. Jimin stepped in. I figured you'd watch it. Neither of them moved. The air turned electric with tension. Jungkook looked up, 100 thoughts raging behind his eyes. You sent it? Taehyung accused. Jimin raised a brow. Do I look that desperate? Then who did? Taehyung's voice shook. Because this was private, confidential. Buried. Jimin didn't answer. He walked to the center of the room and sat down slowly, folding his arms on the table. It doesn't matter who sent it. It matters that it's out now. Jungkook's voice was hoarse. Why didn't you tell me you kept a copy? I didn't. That's what's terrifying, Jimin replied. There's more. Don't pretend there isn't. Jungkook's heart thundered in his ears. He suddenly felt naked, exposed. Like someone had reached into his chest and laid his guilt out under surgical lights. Taehyung was pacing now. So what, someone's leaking our private fights to what, destroy BTS? Divide us? No, Jimin said. Someone's trying to remind us of what we became. And maybe they're not wrong. Jungkook sank into a chair. So what now? We go on stage like nothing happened? Act like that video isn't already in every staff member's DMs by now? Jimin laughed bitterly. We don't get to act. We've never had that luxury. We survive. That's what we've always done. Jungkook clenched his jaw. But at what cost? Taehyung turned to the window, staring out at the city where dreams and illusions bled together. Maybe it's time we stop surviving and start choosing who we want to be. The next few days were a blur of emergency meetings, internal reviews, and PR damage control. HYBE's executive team flew in from Seoul within hours. A gag order was issued to staff. Still, rumors spiraled online. The hashtag BTS Fight Club trended for 6 hours. Clips were dissected, fan theories exploded, trust fractured. Namjoon gathered them all in a private hotel suite. No cameras, no phone. We're going to take control of the narrative, he said. But not with a press release. Jungkook stared at him. Then how? With the truth. Taehyung laughed humorlessly. You think the truth will save us? No, Namjoon said. But it's the only thing worth standing on when everything else crumbles. Jimin was silent. Then, after a long pause, he spoke. Fine. We go live. No scripts. No PR handlers. Everyone looked at him. Jimin nodded. Let the fans see who we are when we're not performing. All of us. Together or not. Jungkook hesitated. His palms were sweating. But for the first time in days, his voice was steady. Then let's do it. 24 hours later, BTS went live. No countdown, no teaser, just 7 members sitting on a single couch. No matching outfits, no stylists, no polished lighting. Jungkook went first. You've seen clips. You've seen fragments. Let us show you the whole truth." Jimin looked at him. "I heard him. You saw that. You didn't see the weight behind it. Doesn't excuse it. But maybe it explains it." Taehyung added, "We're not perfect. We've fought. We've resented each other. But we've also loved each other enough to stay." Namjoon's words landed like thunder. This group is made of humans, not idols, not saints. Humans who bleed, break, and heal. And for the next hour, they talked, really talked, about grief, about pride, about fame and the way it devours identity, about losing pieces of yourself to survive. They cried, they laughed, they disagreed, but they never looked away from each other. When the stream ended, the chat had exploded. Millions of hearts, messages in every language, no hashtags, just one phrase repeated over and over again. "We still believe." In the aftermath, no PR scandal, no forced apology tour, just something far more rare in entertainment. Rebirth. The air was different now. Even after the live stream shattered millions of illusions and softened millions more hearts, the quiet following it wasn't peace. It was the stillness right before a second storm. The kind of silence that whispered, "Something's not over yet." And Jungkook knew it. He sat alone in the corner suite of the hotel, half lit by the dying sun bleeding through the glass wall. The skyline of Los Angeles glittered in the distance, unaware or perhaps indifferent to the emotional war zones humans waged in rooms like his. The others had gone to rest, or at least pretend to. He couldn't. His phone buzzed for the third time in 2 hours. Same email. No sender. No subject. Just one word in the body of the message. Tick. No explanation. No signature. Attached to it a zip file labeled Black Swan Protocol, Unfiltered Truth. He didn't open it. Not yet. But the weight of it pressed against his ribs like a loaded gun tucked beneath the skin. He knew what was inside. Or at least he feared he did. When the knock came, it wasn't loud. Not frantic. Just precise. 3 short taps. Almost polite. He opened the door without speaking. Jimin stood there. His eyes bloodshot, but his spine straight. He didn't smile. Neither did Jungkook. Jimin stepped in and closed the door behind him. The latch clicked shut like a final judgment. For a moment, neither of them spoke. They just stood there, brothers, ghosts, adversaries. "Did you get it too?" Jimin finally asked. Jungkook nodded. Jimin sat down on the edge of the bed, staring at the untouched glass of water on the nightstand. "Taehyung thinks it's someone from inside. I don't think he's wrong." Jungkook remained standing. "It's not just a leak. It's personal." They knew which clips to cut, which phrases to amplify. The pauses, the silences. They knew what to twist and how. Jungkook finally moved toward the desk. He pulled out a second phone from the drawer. An old one. Not synced to cloud. No social media apps. He powered it up, screen flickering for a second before steadying. "I've kept this offline for 2 years, he said. Jimin looked up. "What's on it?" "Everything." There was a beat of silence. "Define everything," Jimin said. Jungkook swallowed hard. "Recordings, notes, voice memos, stuff I recorded during the burnout period." Jimin blinked. "The 2021 blackout?" Jungkook nodded. "That's when we stopped speaking for almost 4 months." Jungkook's voice was low. "Because I found something I wasn't supposed to find." Jimin's face changed. His posture straightened. "What are you talking about?" Jungkook didn't answer immediately. He plugged the phone into a power bank and opened the files. Scroll after scroll, folder after folder. Some marked in Korean, others with initials. One was labeled, "Don't Trust the Light." He opened it. There, tucked away, was a voice memo titled JH Confession, M4A. Jimin stood slowly. "You recorded Hoseok?" Jungkook's eyes darkened. "No, he recorded himself. He gave it to me, but told me never to play it unless something went very wrong." "And you think now qualifies?" Jimin asked. Jungkook nodded. He hit play. The audio was grainy but clear. Hoseok's voice filtered through, calm but burdened. "If you're hearing this, it means trust has shattered. And if it's shattered, then it's only a matter of time before someone weaponizes what we buried. Back in 2019, when we were in New York, something happened. Not all of you know the truth. You think the argument was about the stage mix? The wardrobe? It wasn't. It was about the contract. The renewal offer Hybe gave only 3 of us signed it first. The others hesitated. And one of us leaked details to an outside producer. That leak cost us the Billboard campaign. That leak came from one of us. Jimin froze. I remember that trip. Jungkook nodded slowly. They thought it was staff. Someone got fired. But the real leak came from someone in our circle. The voice memo continued. We tried to patch it. Namjoon did damage control. Jin pulled every string he had. But the trust crack was never fixed. We just danced over it. If this audio resurfaces, or if the original messages leak, it means someone kept them. Which means someone wants leverage. And if that's the case, we're not in control anymore. Jungkook stopped the recording. Jimin's jaw clenched. So someone is blackmailing us with the truth from years ago? Jungkook nodded. And not just random truth. Layered truth. Painful, specific, targeted. There was a beat of silence before Jimin asked, Do you think it's one of us? Jungkook didn't respond. Do you think it's me? Jimin demanded. No, Jungkook said instantly. But I think someone wants me to. Jimin folded his arms. Then who? Jungkook opened another folder. This one was labeled Mirror Room Nick, 2019. Inside were screenshots of texts. One stood out. It was from a burner number, dated November 2019. It read, He doesn't deserve that solo. You and I both know he's writing emotion, not talent. Jimin read it. His hand trembled. That's not me, he whispered. That's not me. Jungkook nodded. I know, but the style. It's someone close. Someone who knows how to mimic your way of texting. The way you talk in private. Jimin looked sick. You think someone impersonated me? Or worse, Jungkook said, eyes hollow. They've been listening. The next morning, a package arrived at the hotel concierge. No name, no return address. Inside, a USB drive. And a handwritten note. Release this next or I will. They gathered in Namjoon's room. All 7 of them. For the first time in months, no managers, no assistants, just them. Taehyung took the drive and inserted it into a secure laptop. What played was footage none of them had seen before. A camera hidden behind a stage curtain. Sound slightly muffled. The year was 2020. A backstage conversation between Yoongi and Jin. Yoongi's voice was rough. If they don't want to renew, let them go. Jin replied. It's not that simple. If Jungkook leaves, the structure collapses. Hybe needs him front and center. Then buy him out. Make him sign. What about the others? Collateral damage. The footage ended. No one spoke. Not for a long time. Jungkook finally stood. So I wasn't paranoid. Namjoon ran a hand down his face. We were all trying to protect something. But in doing that, we betrayed each other. Taehyung looked at Jin. Did you really say that? Jin stared at the screen, his face unreadable. I don't remember saying it that way. But I don't deny it. Back then, I believed the group would fall apart without Jungkook. I panicked. Yoongi sighed. We were being manipulated too. Hybe was pushing narratives behind closed doors. But that doesn't absolve us. Jimin looked at Jungkook. What do we do now? Jungkook's voice was steady. We take the power back. How? Hoseok asked. Jungkook walked to the window, pulling the curtain open as morning light spilled into the room. We tell the truth before someone else distorts it. Taehyung shook his head. You want to tell fans that their idols were blackmailed, betrayed each other, manipulated by their label? No, Jungkook said. I want to tell them we're human. That the reason we're still here is because we chose to face it instead of fake it. Namjoon stood. If we do this, there's no going back. Jungkook turned, his gaze steady. Then let's not go back. And with that, a new plan began to form. One that would either redeem everything they'd built, or burn it all down. Let me know when you're ready for episode 5, where BTS confronts Hybe directly behind closed doors, and secrets from the boardroom shake the group to its core. It began with a phone call that wasn't supposed to happen. Namjoon had barely finished his coffee when the encrypted line lit up on his private device, one only a few executives in Seoul were even aware existed. The voice on the other end was calm, calculated, and carried the chill of corporate diplomacy soaked in years of hidden power. Mr. Kim, said the man on the line. "We're flying in tonight. The chairman wants a closed-door meeting. No PR team, just the original 7. Namjoon felt his spine stiffen. 7 of us? He asked cautiously. Yes. No staff, no lawyers, no media. You'll be given access to floor 47. Namjoon's hand tightened around the phone. Floor 47. The floor beneath the Hybe Executive Conference Hall. It was infamous within their inner circle designed for crisis isolation. No cameras, no devices. Just concrete, soundproof walls, and decisions made in absolute silence. Is this about the leak? Namjoon asked, though he already knew the answer. Everything, the voice said, and the line went dead. By the time the black SUV delivered them to the private elevator inside Hybe HQ, not a single word had been spoken between the 7 members. Jungkook sat with a blank expression, knuckles turning white from how tightly he gripped his jeans. Jimin was eerily quiet, his arms crossed and eyes locked on the floor. Taehyung fidgeted with a ring on his pinky, a nervous tic that hadn't shown up in years. Hoseok's knee bounced uncontrollably, while Jin sat with a posture that belonged to someone about to testify in a courtroom. Yoongi leaned against the glass, earbuds in, but the music was off. Only Namjoon looked at the building rising around them. He wasn't sure they would be the same after this. The elevator opened to a darkened hallway lit only by recessed lights buried deep in concrete. One by one, they stepped out. Footsteps echoing like slow, rhythmic warnings. At the end of the corridor, a massive black door slid open with a hydraulic hiss. Inside, 4 men sat waiting. No nameplates, no introductions, just dark suits, folders, and eyes that looked through them instead of at them. And then he entered, Chairman Bang Si-hyu. He wasn't smiling. His presence filled the room not with warmth, but with authority too absolute to challenge without consequence. He took his seat at the head of the long glass table and gestured for them to sit. None of them moved. Sit, he repeated. Not angry, not loud, but final. They obeyed. You've caused quite the earthquake, he began, voice steady but cold. The live stream, the leaks, the whispers, the files we told you never existed. Jungkook's head snapped up. So you admit it now? Bang's lips curled into something that was not quite a smile. What I admit and what I allow to be documented are 2 very different things, Jungkook. Namjoon leaned forward. You brought us here without legal counsel. You said this was a private meeting. It is, because if this goes outside this room, everything your careers, your contracts, your legacy burns. Yoongi's eyes narrowed. So you're threatening us? I'm reminding you, Bang said, that you're not untouchable. Jin folded his arms. Neither are you. There was a pause. A quiet one. Dangerous. Bang's expression didn't change. He opened the folder in front of him. Inside were printed screenshots, the ones from the burner email, the backstage video, the leaked audio. You think you've been clever, piecing together breadcrumbs. You think you're exposing us? Jimin's voice was razor sharp. You used us. You pitted us against each other. And now you want us to pretend none of this happened? Bang closed the folder. I created you, he said softly. And I protected you. Through scandals, mental breakdowns, military delays, fan meltdowns. You think you survived this industry because of loyalty? No. You survived because I chose to protect the idea of you. Jungkook slammed his hand on the table, standing. You didn't protect us. You manipulated us, divided us. You made us think we were replaceable unless we tore each other down first. Bang stood as well. And yet, here you are, legends, global icons, on every magazine, every chart. If that was manipulation, then maybe you should thank me. The silence that followed was heavy with disbelief. Taehyung stood slowly. We were kids.
And you sold our pain as art.
Bang tilted his head. And the world bought it. Namjoon stood too. You kept secrets, even from each other. Bang looked at him. You all did that to yourselves. Don't confuse my control with your choices. Then came the twist no one expected. The 4th man in the corner, previously silent, finally spoke. I have a question, he said, his Korean flawless but with an American accent beneath it. Why haven't any of you asked why the leak started now? They all turned, He smiled politely. Because it wasn't us. Jungkook blinked. What? It wasn't Hybe, the man said. We didn't leak the clips. We didn't send the burner emails. We didn't release the footage. Jimin frowned. Then who did? The man looked at them calmly. You did. The room froze. He placed a second folder on the table, opening it to reveal metadata records, file logs, internal access timestamps. Every file leaked, the man said, was downloaded from a private cloud, one registered to a device used by a former staff member, one who had access to your internal Dropbox during the 2020 tour prep, a device that was later synced to two others, one belonging to Jungkook and another to Jimin. Jungkook stepped back. That's not possible. The man turned the file. We traced the login to a hotel Wi-Fi connection in Paris 3 years ago. That's when the files were cloned. Jimin's mouth was dry. We weren't even speaking during that trip. The man smiled. Precisely. Yoongi rubbed his face. Someone set you up, Namjoon whispered. Then who? The man finally answered. One of your former translators. He slid over a photo. They all gasped. It was someone they trusted. Someone who traveled with them for years, ate with them, slept in the same hotel blocks. Someone who left suddenly without explanation. Her name was Hana. Jungkook felt the world tilt beneath him. She was more than just staff. She was there the day he cried in the green room after his mother's diagnosis. She brought him water when he could barely breathe before the Osaka concert. She sat beside Jimin during his panic attack in Berlin and whispered affirmations until he could stand. She was family. And now she was the one behind it all? Bang's face remained unreadable. She left with backup drives, the American man continued. Claimed they were for translation archives. No one thought twice. We didn't realize she had the real backups, Taehyung whispered. She knew everything. Namjoon looked at Bang. Why didn't you tell us? Bang replied. Because I didn't think you were ready to face what people do with betrayal. Until now. Jungkook stepped back, breath shallow. So, what now? What does she want? The American handed them a single envelope. Inside, a letter, handwritten. You wanted to heal. So now tell them everything. Or I will. No demands. No money. No threats. Just a challenge. The room was silent. Then Namjoon said, Then we tell it all. Bang raised a brow. You're willing to lose everything? Jungkook looked at his brothers. We already almost did. And so, they began to prepare. Not a press conference. Not a documentary. But a full exposé. From the inside out. Raw. Unfiltered. Terrifying. And for the first time, not for image, but for truth. Let me know when you're ready for episode 6, where BTS's unfiltered confession is finally released, and what the world does with the truth might not be what they expected. The studio was quiet, but the silence wasn't peaceful, it was loaded. As if the walls themselves were holding their breath, anticipating the chaos about to be unleashed. The floor had been cleared, cameras stripped of brands, lights softened to expose flaws instead of hiding them. There were no teleprompters, no scripts, just 7 chairs, and 7 truths, long buried under layers of rehearsed smiles and curated perfection. Jungkook sat in the middle. He didn't look at anyone yet. His hands rested on his knees, eyes down, the microphone clipped to his collar, feeling heavier than any weight he had carried on his shoulders before. Next to him, Jimin exhaled shakily. He looked like someone standing on the edge of a cliff with full knowledge he had no parachute. Taehyung tapped his fingers against the armrest, slow and rhythmic. Not to calm himself, but to remind his body he was still here. Hosea glanced around nervously, already calculating in his head how this would explode across screens worldwide. Yoongi kept his eyes half closed, listening inwardly more than outwardly. Jin adjusted the collar of his shirt without saying anything, and Namjoon sat last, his jaw clenched so tightly it looked like he'd grind his molars to dust. There were no introductions, just the red light of the camera blinking. Live. Broadcasted. Not to stations, not through an entertainment label, but directly to the world. No filters, no subtitles, no editing. Jungkook leaned forward. We're not here to protect the image of BTS. The sentence cracked the stillness. We're here to destroy it, Jimin said next. Namjoon's voice followed, steady like a judge reading a verdict. Because the image we've sold you wasn't a lie, but But it wasn't the truth either. Taehyung looked up. We've been bleeding behind stage lights. Yoongi nodded. And we've made each other bleed. There was a pause. Jin took a breath. This is not a scandal. This is our confession. And so it began. Jungkook went first. He talked about the pressure of being the golden maknae, how the praise never felt like love, it felt like a trap. He admitted to resenting the image built around him, the way it isolated him from the others, making him a standard instead of a brother. I didn't cry on stage because I was sensitive, he said. I cried because I didn't know who I was anymore when the lights went off. I started singing because I loved it, but somewhere along the way, I started performing just to survive. Jimin took over. His hands shook. But his voice didn't. I hurt Jungkook, he said bluntly. Not just on camera, off camera, in private, with words that were meant to cut. I envied his freedom while I drowned in expectations I couldn't escape. I judged him when I should have protected him. I doubted him when I should have listened. He looked directly at the lens. I betrayed our bond, not once, repeatedly. There was no music, no montage, no dramatic swell, just pain laid bare. Hoseok was next. He confessed to witnessing the fractures long before they cracked open. He admitted to being the group's emotional compass publicly, while often ignoring his own disorientation privately. I knew, he whispered, I knew things were off, but I smiled anyway, because I thought if I smiled big enough, maybe none of it would be real. He looked down, but silence is betrayal too. Yoongi followed. He spoke of trust, how fragile it was, how easily shattered. He talked about the recording he left Jungkook, about his own suspicions, about the guilt of watching them all unravel and saying nothing because it wasn't the right time. I've always been the one to handle pain alone, so I expected them to do the same. That was cruel. Then Jin spoke. His confession was sharp. I believed this group couldn't survive without control, so I sided with power, with management, with deals you never knew about. I justified it by telling myself it was for the group, but really it was for my own fear. Fear that if I didn't keep us in line, we'd fall apart. He paused. We fell apart anyway. Then Taehyung. He looked straight into the camera, his voice soft but cutting. I wanted to quit. That silenced the world. I wanted to leave. After the 2020 tour was canceled, I was tired of pretending. I was tired of performing a version of myself that no longer existed. But I stayed because I was afraid. Not of failure, but of losing them. Even when we hurt each other, we're still us. But I kept secrets. I lied. I smiled when I hated them. I laughed when I wanted to scream. That's not bravery. That's cowardice. Namjoon was last. He didn't start with words. He started with tears. They came silently, sliding down his face as he stared directly at the lens. I built this house, he said, with words, with poetry, with leadership. But I never knew how to be weak in front of them. So I became a wall, strong, unmoving, and that wall kept them out, even when they begged to be let in. His voice cracked. I betrayed myself before I betrayed any of them. He looked around at his brothers. I'm sorry. No one moved. Then Jungkook stood. He walked toward the camera. Close. So close. The lens captured every quiver in his pupils. We're not asking for forgiveness, he said. We're asking for understanding. Then Jimin joined him. We're not apologizing for being broken. We're promising to rebuild with nothing left hidden, Taehyung added. Namjoon placed a hand on Jungkook's shoulder. The next era of BTS doesn't begin with a song, he said. It begins with truth. The feed ended. The world stopped. And then it exploded. Trending worldwide within seconds. Not just BTS hashtags, but phrases that had never appeared before. Idols are human. Truth over image. We still believe. Media outlets scrambled. Corporate heads spun. Hybe went silent for 12 hours straight. And then, the backlash came. Sponsors paused contracts. International news outlets speculated if it was career suicide. A few Western talk shows mocked them. But most of the world didn't mock. They cried. Because for the first time, fans weren't looking at idols. They were looking at people. Imperfect. Honest. Brave. And then came the message. Hana, the translator who had leaked the files, she posted a single tweet. I didn't want to destroy them. I wanted them to finally free themselves. And they did. I'm done now. Let them be. And then she vanished. No interviews. No exposés. Just silence. In the weeks that followed, the members rarely appeared in public. But one by one, letters began to surface. Handwritten notes sent to fan bases, not mass-printed, not commercialized. Letters with tremors in the ink, corrections scratched out by real hands, smudges from where tears had landed. And the fandom didn't collapse. It evolved. They didn't cancel. They connected. A new movement began, not for perfection, but for truth. And in that truth, BTS wasn't lost. They were reborn. Let me know when you're ready for episode 7, where BTS faces their first live performance post-confession, and a shocking surprise in the crowd brings the entire stadium to a standstill. The stadium was sold out, but for the first time in their career, the cheers didn't sound the same. It wasn't because there were fewer people. In fact, there were more than ever rows and rows of fans wearing black and purple, their banners trembling in the wind, their army bombs dimly lit as if in mourning or reverence. There was a kind of breathless stillness that filled the space between screams. It wasn't just anticipation, it was fear. Fear that something had changed forever. Fear that tonight, when BTS stepped onto the stage, it would no longer be as idols but as survivors. And no one knew what kind of sound that kind of truth would make. Backstage, Jungkook sat alone in front of the mirror. The makeup artist had long finished her work, but he hadn't moved since. He was staring into the mirror not to check his reflection, but because he was still trying to recognize himself after everything that had happened. His hands were shaking, the same hands that had held microphones and sold out arenas across the globe. The same hands that had clutched awards, hugged fans, wiped tears, and held back pain for years now trembled with uncertainty. Jimin entered without knocking. He wore all black, no accessories, no smile. His eyes met Jungkook's in the mirror. "You okay?" he asked. Jungkook gave a weak nod. "Yeah, just thinking." Jimin took a breath. "You always think too much right before we perform. Nothing's changed." Jungkook turned toward him. "Everything's changed." Jimin didn't argue. He walked over and sat beside him. Their knees touched. The silence between them was soft now, not sharp like it used to be. Jimin said, "I still don't know what to say to the fans." "Then don't say anything," Jungkook replied. "Let the music speak first." "But what if they expect an explanation?" Jungkook looked at him. "We already gave them the truth. Now we give them the sound of healing." Jimin nodded, but his hands were also trembling. In the hallway, Namjoon was pacing back and forth, rehearsing words he didn't even know he was going to say. Hoseik was checking his in-ears for the 5th time. Jin kept adjusting his mic pack, even though it was secure. Yoongi sat with his eyes closed, muttering something under his breath, maybe lyrics, maybe prayers. Taehyung stood near the curtains, his fingers brushing against the fabric as if he could feel the pulse of the crowd beyond it. And then, the light turned green. It was time. The announcer's voice echoed through the stadium. "Ladies and gentlemen, BTS." They stepped onto the stage together. The crowd roared, but it wasn't deafening. It was emotional, like thunder wrapped in tears. Jungkook walked to the center, heart pounding so loud it almost drowned out the opening instrumental. He took a deep breath, placed his hand over his chest, and opened his mouth. The first note rang out raw, unfiltered, his voice cracking on the edge of vulnerability. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't polished, but it was real. They moved through the opening song without choreography, just standing in their own space, singing with eyes wide open, locking gazes with the crowd, with each other, with the past. And then, halfway through the second song, everything stopped. The lights, the sound, the screens, dead. A hush fell over the stadium like a spell. For a few seconds, no one moved. Jungkook's mic went dead. He tapped it. Nothing. The staff rushed on stage, murmuring into headsets. Emergency protocols. Technical failure. But then something stranger. The main screen behind them flickered. Not a test pattern. Not a system reboot. But an image. A face. Hana. The crowd gasped. Her pre-recorded video started playing. Her face was pale, unsmiling, framed by darkness. "If you're seeing this," she said, "then they did it. They told the truth." BTS stood frozen on stage. Jungkook's breath hitched. Hana continued. I never wanted to be the villain. I didn't release those files to destroy them. I did it because no one else would hold the people above them accountable. Not the managers, not the media, not even themselves. But now they have. And now I disappear. The screen cut to black. A single sentence appeared. Let them be human. Then the lights came back on. The sound returned. The stage came alive again. But no one moved. Jimin took a step forward and faced the crowd. His voice trembled. She did that without telling us. Jungkook walked up beside him. But she's not wrong. Namjoon turned to the others. What do we do? Yoongi said quietly. We sing anyway. So they did. They started from the top. No visuals, no fireworks, no synchronized choreo, just voices. And one by one, the crowd began singing with them. Until 60. 0 people weren't watching BTS, they were singing with them. And Jungkook. Jungkook finally smiled. Not the stage smile. Not the idol smile. The real one. The one that said, I am still here. After the concert, the media erupted. Some called it chaos. Others called it history. But the fans called it something else. Rebirth. Let me know when you're ready for episode 8, where a letter from Jungkook's father surfaces publicly, revealing long-buried family secrets that send shockwaves through both the fandom and the group itself. It began with a delivery plane, quiet, almost invisible. A cream-colored envelope slid under Jungkook's hotel door early in the morning. No stamp, no address, no name, just the words handwritten in thick black ink. To my son, if you're still willing to read this. He stared at it for a long time. Didn't touch it. Didn't breathe. He already knew who it was from. He hadn't seen his father in years, not since the night he walked out of the family house with a backpack and a cracked heart, swearing never to look back unless the silence became less painful than the shouting had been. Since then, his life had been filled with noise, concerts, awards, applause, camera shutters, screams of love from strangers. But none of that ever replaced the sound he missed most. A father's voice saying, I'm proud of you. Jungkook slowly picked up the envelope, fingers trembling. The paper felt heavier than it should have, like the weight of time was sealed inside. He took it to the small table by the window and sat down, alone. The city outside still blanketed in the gray mist of dawn. He opened the envelope. Inside was a letter, written in the rough, familiar strokes of a man who had never been soft with his words, but this time, something was different. It began without greeting. I watched the live stream. I didn't recognize the man you've become, but I think I finally understood the boy I broke. Jungkook's breath caught. I was wrong. Not for being strict, but for never once telling you that your pain mattered. I thought if I made you hard, you'd never shatter. I thought if I pushed you away from weakness, you'd be strong enough to survive anything. But now I see that I didn't make you strong. I made you